Hi everyone, welcome to this special episode for Nukitashi 2. So, it's not like a regular episode where I do a let's play of the game itself. So it's more of me disclosing and revealing what happens in the two appends that came with the Japanese version for Nukitashi 2. So you still have the original game, but later on, Qruppo added two appends to it. So we have the Hinami append and also the Susuko Append. And unfortunately, Shiravune was not able to bring these two appends to the English version that's on Steam, well, the cut down version. And it's because they couldn't get the rights to it. And unfortunately, you won't be able to install the Japanese appends to the Steam version because they're using different game engines. So the Nukitashi 2 for Japanese originally was built on the Shiravune engine, whereas the Shiravune release is on the Artemis engine. So the Shiravune engine is quite old, and even Qruppo, the producers, have went to the Artemis engine for their current title, or their latest title, which is Hentai Prison. So this is the episode where I'll reveal what happens in these two appends. So just as a general warning, this episode will contain spoilers, so if you don't want to hear what happens in the two appends, then you should stop this video and not watch it. So for those of you who want to know what happens in the appends, so I'm going to start with the shorter of the two, so that's the Hinami append, and it's basically one extra H scene added to the Hinami after story in Nukitashi 2. So Junnosuke is giving Hinami mock interviews. So despite Hinami being small, we know that she's a third year, and pretty soon she'll be applying for colleges. So Hinami plans to pursue a career in childcare. So at first, the mock interview goes well, with Hinami able to answer the questions very easily. So questions that you would expect in a typical college interview. But then Junnosuke mentions that, well, I'm pretty sure the colleges will challenge you. So they'll ask stress interview questions, things that will make you uncomfortable or are hard to answer, and they want to see how you react. So basically, how you handle pressure. So Junnosuke tries that, and he ends up going into H questions. And there's one point where he makes Hinami strip, which is kind of wrong. And he also triggers the "I'm not a loli" response from Hinami. But then it's like, well, oh, I have to remember to stay calm, so this is a stress interview, and I can't react like this if I want to succeed. But in the end, Hinami is able to handle the stress interview questions too. So next comes lunch, where Hinami made something for Junnosuke, and Junnosuke replies with, well, we have to eat this indoors because it's going to rain soon. And it reminds Hinami about, oh, but I still have clothes hanging outside, so I have to go back and take those in before it rains. So Hinami rushes back home, and around the same time, the sister Asane wakes up. So she says, well, I heard Wata-chan's voice earlier. And then Asane finds Hinami's raincoat and smartphone, and it gets Junnosuke super worried that he rushes out and looks for Hinami. So around this time, the rain is pouring down heavily, and Junnosuke finds Hinami stranded, so she's cold and drenched. And to help Hinami, Junnosuke takes Hinami over to the forest where they wait out the storm. So wait until the rain subsides. And also to help with Hinami being cold, he takes Hinami's clothes off. But as a side effect, it seduces both of them, which leads to the H scene. And to make it worse, they hear voices of Ray and Ran, two SS soldiers patrolling the area. And at first, it was all good because the rain drowned out their voices. But then, after the H scene, near the end, the rain subsides and they try to sneak back home. So go back to Junnosuke's house and help clean Hinami up. But then they bump into Ray and Ran. So Hinami's like, "Oh, hello, Ray-chan. How are you doing? Everything's all great." But Hinami forgets that she's naked. So Ray's upset and, "Hey, Junnosuke, what's with this? So I thought you were the one who destroyed the Lewis Sex Act, and this is what you want, or what you done?" And Junnosuke tries to defend himself with, "Oh, well, Hinami's cute, and I couldn't help it, and she's great." And Rand's like, "Well, even worse. So she's a lowly underage person, so even with the original Lewis Sex Act, that's illegal. So you're gonna be punished." And Hinami fighting back with, "I'm not a lowly." And I'm pretty sure Junnosuke didn't hear Hinami's chant because he kept on rambling about how great Hinami is to try to convince Ray and Ran. And that's pretty much the append for Hinami. So going to the other append, so that's the Susuko Append. This is a much longer append. It's like one extra route attached to Nukitashi too. And you can see this append from the new game menu where all the other routes are. So Suzuko's append begins with Asane presenting to Junnosuke a new program that she wrote called Anywhere Music Playback Kun. The fact that BGMs define and describe the mood and feelings of all these different environments, settings, and events. And we can change the mood, feelings by changing the BGM. So Asane gives Junnosuke a demonstration, and Junnosuke likes it. And okay, so how about we expand this program to other events and scenarios? So the program has one glitch where whenever Fumino shows up, it always plays the BGM Sentence No. And it gets to the point where Asane is so irritated that she tells Fumino to get off the screen. So later on, Junnosuke tests the program to other people in other places. So for Ray, she feels insulted when Junnosuke plays like 5 to 6 different BGMs on her. And he plays some battle BGM for Misaki and a sad BGM for Ikuko. And then going to Toka, who's giving an announcement as the president of the student council, he plays something that makes the announcement less menacing. But then some mysterious force overrides the program with the correct BGM, and turns out that the VP of the student council, so that's Mizuhiki Akino, was able to catch on to what Junnosuke is doing. And she shows off with, "You know, as the VP of the student council, I have access to lots and lots of music, old and new. So what do you think, Junnosuke-kun?" But then, for some reason, the program plays a romantic BGM for Susuko, and it generates feelings for both Susuko and Junnosuke. And it gets to the point where the next day, Junnosuke's running crazily around school, and every time he hears a word with the letters Su in it, it gets him startled. And at one point, his friends, so both NONS and SS, had to stop him, and they tried to ask what's going on and what's getting him all worked up. But then Susuko shows up and she mentions that, "Oh, well, I'm Bana-san's assistant, so that's what he told me." So it does tie back into the Senzuri Pakamen route from Nukitashi 2, so that's available in the Shiravune version. So Junnosuke finds Susuko in the SS room, and he tells her, "Well, I'm the Sex Emperor, I'm the VP of the Student Council, so you work under me." And Susuko happily accepts. And Asane also mentions that, "You're not my Oni-chan, so even though you have the same blood, you're giving off a different incense." And it gets Junnosuke thinking that, I must have transported to World B. So a reference to the Senzuri Point Pakamen route. And like what happened in that route, Junnosuke will have to work as the Sex Emperor and also the VP of the Student Council while he finds a solution or a way to return to World A or the regular world. So working under Junnosuke, Susuko reveals more about her background in history and also how she got Chuba-chan, the parakeet that she always carries around. So starting with the Chuba-chan, he was found sad and depressed at a pet store. So the owner mistreated Chuba-chan because he's always sick and therefore unmarketable and is hard to sell. But then the pet shop owner found an opportunity to sell Chuba-chan, so to a circus, and he already did so to Chuba-chan's brother, and Susuko saved Chuba-chan from the same fate by using a lot of her allowance from SS to buy Chuba-chan from the pet store. So it's like saving Chuba-chan from a horrible fate. So for Susuko, her real name is Inami Nagi, and she's a first year, so in the same class as Toka and Asane. And if you remember from the original Nukitashi 1, so in the Hinami route, Junnosuke pretended to apply for SS mainly to gain access to the SS room where he can find information about the students currently enrolled in the school. So he was working alongside another recruit, and that person was Susuko. And we don't get to see Susuko's appearance until Nukitashi 2, when Junnosuke is officially part of SS as the VP and the Sex Emperor. But anyways, that's more spoilers that we don't need to go into. So for Susuko here, she mentions that she's deep in debt thanks to her irresponsible father, the fact that he gets drunk easily and also gambles a lot. And the mother abandoned the Nagi family because she didn't want to deal with such a bad husband. And that's why Susuko wanted to be part of SS, so for the scholarship. So for Junnosuke, he too feels depressed and sad about Susuko and wants to help her out. It's like, well, I want to be the man who helps pay off Susuko's debt and be her main pillar of support. And he confesses to Susuko, and Susuko accepts it. But then they realize that, wait, so World B is falling apart. And turns out that it was created only to bring Susuko and Junnosuke closer together. And now that it's achieved its purpose, it no longer needs to exist. Which means that pretty soon, Junnosuke and maybe Susuko will be sent back to World A or the regular real world. So Susuko and World B tells Junnosuke, well, if you go back to your world, please confess to that Susuko over there. And Junnosuke agrees. But then going back to World A, this Susuko rejects the confession, the fact that it's too embarrassing to go out with anyone when I have so much debt. And it makes Junnosuke heartbroken, but he won't give up. So for the next days and nights, he's in the forest digging endlessly for something that will pay off the debt. And it makes everyone in NS worry, especially from Nanase, maybe Asane and Fumino and Misaki. But surprisingly, in a 1 in a million chance, Junnosuke digs up a treasure chest with gold bars in it, and it's worth up to 30 billion yen, and he gives it all to Susuko. But as you know, with that much money, it would shock anyone. So Susuko is like, well, I can't really accept this. This is way too much for me. So according to Fumino, the chest came from a general who had a dispute with the government, and to prevent the government from finding the money, he buried it somewhere. And this money is so great that not only it pays off Susuko's debt, there's plenty more left over for other things. But because the forest is not owned by the Tachibanas, it means that it has to go through proper channels to transfer ownership. So first, it gets registered with the government, and also the owner of the forest has to decide what he wants to do with the treasure. So the owner is an old guy named Kingo, and he doesn't mind about the treasure. It's like, well, I'll just take a 10% commission out of it, and that's all for me. And the governor mentions that, well, since you, Junnosuke, was the one who dug up this treasure, it makes sense for you to take at least 1% of the money from it. And even with 1%, so that's 300 million yen, that's more than enough for many things. So with that money, Junnosuke plans on, what should we do with this money? So let's go on a trip, let's go to the hot springs, let's go to the beach. But with everyone's schedules, it's hard to make times meet. So as a result, they go to some VR world. So it came as a byproduct of another investment that Junnosuke was working on. So he paid money to a company that started by Rin called Pennies. So Pennies' first product was a gun that spews hate words, and it was unsuccessful. But all the tech that went into making this gun got used for the VR world. So the VR world is a beach, and they can make anything happen in the VR world. So turn, I'll say, sand into metal, or maybe like turn lead into gold. And they find out that this VR world also serves as an RPG world. So they get HP, special powers, attack powers, stats, weapons, and they can battle each other. And it was all good until a monster shows up called Games Matter. So Games Matter is run by Rin, and Rin's angry because how come I was not invited to this VR world? And even the SS leaders, so Toka, Rei, and Ikiko, didn't want to be with Rin because whenever she shows up, it's always trouble. So she acts too violently, and she makes things worse than it's supposed to be and brings chaos. So this monster is overleveled and can easily defeat Junnosuke and his friends. So Games Matter defeats Nanase first, but by defeating Nanase, it means Nanase gets shut out of the VR world and back into the regular world. So with Nanase out, she goes around and takes everyone off of VR. So go to their place, log them out of VR, and get them to take off their VR headset. And while that's happening, Junnosuke is looking for ways to defeat Games Matter, or Rin. So he ends up working with Susuko, and being a couple, it levels them up, and using glitches and bugs in the VR system, they're able to overpower game's matter and defeat it. And Rin, being disconnected from the VR world, is still angry the fact that, well, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to extract my revenge on you, Tachibana-san. And then we go to this dinner lunch scene. So Junsuke goes out with Mizuhiki and Schubert, and they eat really big meals. And despite it being big, they're still hungry. But then it turns out, so like breaking the fourth wall, the girls were watching a movie all along. So it's part of a series, and I think it was like, well, it's kind of sad that it ended on a cliffhanger. So next we go to the date. So after all this, Susuko agrees that, okay, well, let's be temporary couples. So go on a temporary date and see how it works out. And during the date, a news crew constantly chases after Junnosuke and Susuko. And they try their best to hide, but in the end, the news crew catches up to them. And turns out the anchor is Susuko's sister. So she too has an alias, and she calls herself Anna, and her real name is Sanami Nagi. So she just wanted to ask Junnosuke about the treasure and such. Now, unfortunately, all of this comes to a pretty sad end thanks to Koki Senba, one of the big people in SHO. So Koki wanted to be part of SHO under the old Fluid Sex Act. So that was the law that required everyone to be horny, and it legalized rape for the whole island. And Koki could rape anybody and shoot at people who don't comply. But under the new version, it means more office work for Koki. So the desk, paperwork, documents, meetings, and reporting to the boss. And Koki really hates it, so she's hiding in the forest, hoping that no one from SHO find her. And then she slips through a crack and finds a statue, and it gets her all aroused, and she rapes it. And pretty soon, for Junnosuke and the others, they sense all these earthquakes, and then see big volcanic eruptions from off the coast of Seiro Island. And it makes everyone question and panic. It's like, well, there are no prior warnings, so how could this happen spontaneously? That's impossible. Like a 1 in a million chance. And that's where Koki reveals that, oh, it's because I raped a doll and it broke. And it makes everyone angry. So Fumino mentions that that statue slash doll is meant to be like a seal or like a protection. So before that statue was built, there were two gods fighting on this island, and this island was a very unhospitable place to live. So lots of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And they found that these gods are powered up because of H energy. So in order to get these gods to calm down, they have to find some way to seal all this massive H energy away. So a priest from the old days offered himself as a sacrifice, and that's what the doll slash statue is. So it's meant to seal away the powers, and as a result, the gods calm down, and Seiro Island, as a result, has all year round good weather. But then Koki broke it, and it unleashed all this H energy at the gods, and now they're able to fight once more. So now SS, SHO, and NLNS have to work together to evacuate everyone and move them away from the volcanic eruptions. So they're coming from one direction, and the geography of Seiro Island provides some kind of natural shield for them. And we get to see the two Robo Hamidori-kuns come to life, to action. So one from Mizuhiki and one from Misaki. So these two were seen in the Senzuri Point Pakamen route. So they're on the coast, deflecting as many large volcanic rocks as possible, while Junnosuke is working more inland on making sure the rocks don't hit any of the residents. And he was using his own assortment of weapons, but it requires some H energy, and Susuko's the one who gives it to Junnosuke. So eventually he finds the key to powering up, and there is some connection to the Senzui Pakamen route. So Junnosuke is reminded of some memory from that route where he had Susuko expose herself to power him up. So he had Susuko here do the same thing, and it allowed him to power up and defeat the last of the rocks from the volcanic eruptions. And then, surprisingly, the volcano goes dormant. So apparently, something got satisfied. So in the aftermath, Junnosuke, Rei, and Toka all suffer injuries, and for the rest of the people, they remain unharmed. So like Ikuko. So Toka's in a wheelchair, and it's like, well, it's okay because I have many friends from SS who will support me. And Rei's like, well, it was kind of tough because I had to go around in my crutch to get Toka to sit still for her injections. So, also on the bad note, all the treasures that Junnosuke dug up went to pay for the reconstruction of Sarah Island. And they actually needed more money, so SS funds, and also some relief from Japan. And even Rin had to sell off her company called Pennies to help pay for the reconstruction efforts. But Rin was able to start a new company, and it turns out now the gun that spews out hate words is the hot item that people want. And for Rin's like, well, I still won't admit defeat. I'm going to defeat you someday, Tachibana-san. And for Koki, SHO decides to keep her and promote her to honorary chairman. And in her new working conditions, she cannot touch a gun. So they find that firing her might make things worse because it allows Koki to be free and do whatever she wants, which might lead to more disasters. And for Susuko, it's like, well, Bana-san, I see you as being part of my family, so I want us to be together, and even though I'm back in debt, I want us to work together to pay off this debt. And at the end, Junnosuke and Susuko become a real couple, and likewise, Susuko still has that program from the beginning from Asane, so the Anywhere music playback tune, and she plays a song to celebrate their engagement. And that's about it for the Susuko Append. So jokes here and there, and a little bit of the breaking of the fourth wall. So before I end this episode, I want to mention one thing that I missed while I was doing the playthrough for the short cut down Steam version of Nukitashi 2. So we learn a lot about SS and why they're in, especially with respect to Toka, Rei, and Ikuko. So most of the SS, they are victims of child abuse, child neglect, and parents with problems. And they see each other as family, having shared similar backgrounds. And the scholarship is what really keeps them going. So when they saw that Junnosuke was going after the lewd sex act from Nukitashi 1, it was kind of like he was taking away their golden goose, because that law was what was funding their scholarships. And that's why they fought hard against Junnosuke to protect the golden goose. And even though the law itself is pretty ridiculous and disgusting in nature, the SS are willing to endure it because of the scholarship. And for Toka, Rei, and Ikuko, they worked hard to achieve some of the highest positions in SS. So they're known as the Big Three, or like the leaders of SS. And I won't say much because that's heavily covered in the Senzori Point Pakamen route. So going forward, this is the end of my Generation 8.5. And for Generation 9, or my 9th set of Let's Play videos, I'm going to go into the Saga Planet titles like King Iro Lover Itch and King Iro Lover Itch Golden Time, as well as Ubisoft titles like Serenbanka, Sabbath of the Witch, Railroad Joker, and more. And I'm going to take a break once again because I want to do Generation 9 when I have upgraded and replaced my equipment. So my equipment is getting old. Even though they still work, they're showing signs of performance lags. And I've had these systems for quite some time, so about 7 years, and I've done 8 generations of videos with these computers. So it's time for an upgrade. So with that in mind, I'll see you in a future playthrough on a future game.